Welcome to today's video where we'll explore two short stories. I Am I by Drew Hayden Taylor, and this is a story by Jeanette C. Armstrong. In this video, we'll explore the characters, point of view, plot, relating with three subcategories: suspense, conflict, and tone, as well as the devices utilized in the story. Once the analysis of the two stories is completed, we'll proceed to comparison and conclude by theme statements for each story. So let's dive into the analysis of our first story. This is a story by Jeanette C. Armstrong. Let's begin by introducing the key characters who brought this tale to life. There are in total 9 characters in the story: me, woman, George, coyote, Okanagan people, swallow people, young men, old person, and people found inside the Nespelem. Protagonists are Coyote and me, and antagonists are Swallow people, Swallow culture, and constructors constructed by the Swallow people. With our character set, let's talk about the point of view in the story. Cut to the chase, this is a story told from a first-person point of view. There are 4 main reasons for this: use of personal pronouns, personal reflections and thoughts, subjective languages, and direct dialogue. Use of personal pronouns. The narrator consistently uses first-person pronouns such as me, I, and my. For example, phrases such as "it came to me," "I had been sitting up with the fire," and "I was getting very sleepy" indicate that the narrator is sharing their own experiences and thoughts. Personal reflections and thoughts. The narrator shares personal reflections and thoughts throughout the story. They provide details about their experience at the women's gathering, their interactions with George, and their observations of Coyote and the people. These personal insights suggest that the story is being narrated from the perspective of the first-person narrator. Subjective language. The use of subjective language is consistent with a first-person point of view. For example, phrases like "I was wrapped up in Pendleton blanket and I was hoping to eat a couple of salmon for lunch" show or may show the narrator's personal experiences and desires. The introduction of the story focuses on establishing the setting and the occurrence of women's gathering at Old Rock. The tone of this paragraph is primarily neutral and descriptive, providing information to the readers. Moreover, the introduction mentions that the story is being told from first-person perspective, as indicated by the phrase "from me." Additionally, it introduces the main character, Coyote. Fourth paragraph was analyzed as the initial incident. It lets the readers know that the Coyote is going to visit the people in Okanagan. It also describes the reason why Coyote is visiting the people in Okanagan, and the tone of it was mostly neutral and descriptive. From 5th paragraph to 8th paragraph, it describes that the Coyote observes the change caused by the Swallow people. Large structures blocking the river at Grand Coulee and Chief Joseph. These displayed the indirect conflict between Coyote and the structures constructed by the Swallow people. Before the conflict has been shown, sentences like these created the anticipation which acted as the suspense. These were analyzed as the rising action, and it had overall negative and anxious tones. But once Coyote finds out the people fishing, the tone changed to relieving tone. Paragraphs from 10th to 23rd were analyzed as the climax. Coyote encounters 2 young men while fishing, tries to communicate in Okanagan language, but realizes that they don't understand. Switches to Swallow talk, asks about fishing, expresses disappointment, inquires about the people, and gets frustrated due to the language barrier and hunger. The tone in these paragraphs can be described as a mix of disappointment, frustration, and hunger. As well as in the rising action, the following sentences fostered the anticipation which acted as the suspense. The conflict in these paragraphs was barriers between the Coyote and the Swallow's language, which is evaluated as part of the Swallow's culture. In between of 24th and 29th paragraphs, Coyote encounters the people who initially struggles to understand Coyote, but eventually offers to take Coyote to Nespelem, where they meet an old woman who can communicate in their language and explains the adverse impact of Swallow's action on their community. These are evaluated as the following action, and the old woman, recognizing the Coyote, created curiosity, which at the end acted as a suspense. Overall, the tone in this paragraph can be described as a mix of surprise, confusion, and sadness. The rest of the paragraphs were the conclusion. Coyote tries to alleviate the old woman's distress with a joking comment about oversleeping, but the woman's continued tears reveal her sense of being unheard and forgotten. The paragraphs contain a conflict between Coyote's attempt to lighten the mood with a joking comment about oversleeping and the woman's continued sadness, evoking a tone of lightheartedness mixed with sadness and creating suspense regarding the resolution of the old woman's feeling of being unheard. There were 5 most important devices found in the story. Imagery is present in the descriptions provided in the story. For example, the depiction of the morning star shining brightly and the mention of swallow houses, the huge structure across the river at Grand Clu created visual imagery. Symbolism. There are instances of symbolism in the story, such as the morning star representing a significant moment of realization or inspiration, and Coyote symbolizing a mythical or trickster figure. Dialogue. The conversation between Coyote and 2 young men, including their misunderstandings and miscommunication, adds depth to the characters and advances the plot. Foreshadowing. The mention of the red star coming close to the earth and the strange changes noticed by Coyote hint at the potential conflict and challenges to come in the story. Irony. The irony of Coyote's expectation to find people and Salmon, only discover that people have moved away and that the swallow people have taken over, creates the sense of contrast and surprise in the narrative. Now let's move on to our next story, I Am I by Drew Hayden Taylor. There are in total 14 characters in the story: Professor Mark King, co-workers, security, landmates, Aruna, colleagues, Dr. Gail Chambers, Gary Milne, vice presidents, head of departments, president, CEO, Dom Richard, and the SDDPP. The protagonists are Dr. Chambers, SDDPP, and Professor King. And antagonists vary depending on the conflict. Antagonists are Professor Mark King, the loneliness, the frustration caused by the confusion of identity, sense of belonging, and the pain of realization of reality. This story can be analyzed as an omniscient point of view. There are 3 main reasons for this: comprehensive understanding, objective viewpoint, and contextual understanding. At the beginning of the story, the narrator had a deep understanding and mainly described about the thoughts, emotions, and motivations of the Professor King. As the story moves on, the narrator primarily explained the internal thoughts behind Dr. Chambers and the SDDPP. However, in overall, it provided a deep understanding of all characters' thoughts, emotions, and motivations.